On Tech News Today, new leaks give details about Google's smartwatch and also iOS 8. New details about Silicon Valley's corporate welfare program. And science proves that emotions on social sites spread like a virus. Science, I tell you. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's Thursday, March 13th, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used Apple and Android carrier products are worth at Gazelle.com. And by Shutterstock. With over 30 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 20% off your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use our offer code TNT314. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
On Tech News Today, we explore the most important stories of the day in conversation with the world's leading journalists. Our guest co-anchor today is Lance Ulanoff, Chief Correspondent and Editor-at-Large of Mashable. Welcome, Lance.
Thanks for having me back.
So I understand you're recovering from South by Southwest. I see that you're looking pretty good. You look alive, at least.
Yeah, I'm finally recovered. It's there are long days out at South by because you start early in the morning, and then of course there's the variety of parties and activities at night. And it's all a lot of networking, but it's an eclectic, unusual show, not like other trade shows, certainly not like CES, not so product driven or even software driven. It's idea driven, and it's really about meeting interesting people, getting interesting information. I did get some good stories out of it, but yeah, I'm real happy to be home.
Parties and interesting people. It sounds awful. Well, two very interesting leaks hit this morning within the last hour or so. The first comes from Evan Blass, who posted to his EvLeaks Twitter account what he says are leaked specifications for the upcoming Google smartwatch, which will be made by LG. The specs include a 1.65-inch IPS LCD at the resolution of 280 by 280. That resolution is very important to know at this point for anyone planning to write software. It has apparently 512 megabytes of RAM and 4 gigabytes of internal storage. And he said the CPU hasn't been determined yet, and some expect this watch to actually hit at Google I/O in June. And we're going to be covering that show, and hopefully that's true, because then we'll get to try one. Now, remember that this is a leak. This is unconfirmed, but EvLeaks has a pretty good track record. But again, this is still a leak/rumor at this point. And in another apparent leak, 9to5Mac is claiming that iOS 8 screenshots that first appeared on a Chinese Weibo account are legitimate, or at least the information on them is legitimate. Social networking fans in China some are attacking these screenshots as fake, others are defending them as authentic, but in any event, 9to5Mac's sources say at least the information on them appears very legitimate. The screens show new apps called Preview, Text Edit, Healthbook, and Tips. Now, Text Edit, Healthbook, and Tips sound pretty straightforward. Text Edit sounds like a text editor. Healthbook sounds like a way to collect all of the sort of quantified self data that's coming in, most likely. And Tips is probably some kind of help system for the phone itself. But I don't really know what Preview is. That doesn't sound self-explanatory. And again, this is another leak. We're also hearing that iCloud enhancements are coming soon from Apple. But again, this is a leak. This is unconfirmed, but it's still interesting information and certainly consistent with where Apple is going. What do you think, Lance? Do these sound credible, these leaks?
Yeah, well, certainly on the Google side, I'm not at all surprised that Google would build a smartwatch, and that they would get it out there in time for I/O. The specs sound about right, but understand that my guess is that this watch is Google trying to show other companies what they should do. So in the smartwatch space so far, we now are up to Gear 2, Samsung Gear 2. 5 months ago, they released one. It's kind of a dud. It doesn't work the way people quite expect. It's got a watch on the band. They quickly come out with an update, and they're getting somewhere. But a lot of times, Google will look at the marketplace and say, we want you to get there faster. We really want it to be built more like this because we're more or less building the subsystem for you. So please do this. And of course, with Samsung switching to Tizen, there's even more impetus for really Google to push the smartwatch idea on its platform. And as far as the iOS 8 stuff goes, I don't know. I think preview, actually, my guess is that might be something for developers only, like just something to maybe preview apps that they're building on the iOS 8 platform and not, in fact, some sort of usable app. But, leaks just happen now. So I'm not surprised, and I would expect that's probably real.
I mean, that preview icon that we're looking at is very familiar. If you're running Mac OS 10, of any kind, that's what you see when you're looking at a file that is an image, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a clue into something. But.
Yeah, it appears to show like preview an image. There's the little what do they call it? A loop, the little magnifying glass that sits on top of the photo. Yeah. Interesting, and who knows that icon, of course, could change. It could be a placeholder. This is still early. We're a ways away from iOS 8. Well, in a very interesting report, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Cisco collectively hold about $163 billion in U.S. government debt, much of it offshore, which earns them tax-free interest that's paid for by American taxpayers, according to a report this morning by Nick Mathiasen, writing for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Nick Mathiasen, I want to welcome you to Tech News Today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on.
Now, you wrote that the U.S. government collects taxes from U.S. taxpayers and transfers it to these companies in the form of interest payments. You called the amount vast, but how much are we talking about here?
Well, I estimate the amount of interest paid to the tech companies by the U.S. government in interest on their bond investments as in the region of $325 million last year.
Interesting. Now, this is all legal, of course. You're not speculating that there's any illegality or wrongdoing, right? This is all done through legal means.
Absolutely. No, there's completely legal. This is they are seemingly playing by the rules of the international tax regime, and that just shows you how much reform is needed in that particular area.
Now, I think there's a lot of. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lance. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, it's $325 million across all the companies you looked at?
Yeah, those four. That's how much I basically calculated that on a very conservative interest rate of 0.2%. On that $160 billion worth of investments, you get $320 million.
So that's on an annual basis?
Correct.
So I mean, it seems to me that we're talking about a rounding error for those. I mean, Apple has $150 billion offshore in their own savings, right? That's not the same money, right? A
portion of that money is invested in U.S. bonds, and so they're deriving an income out of their offshore tax pile, which is just sitting there, not being repatriated to the U.S.
So, right, that's what I kind of was, because when I read your article, I wanted to understand better, because we often, when we write about Apple earnings, they always mention cash, and they say what portion of it is offshore. So what you're saying is that pile of cash, a portion of it is actually investment in treasury bonds, so they can get payments against it from the U.S., which I guess offsets taxes that they might have to pay for money they really actually have in the U.S. Is that accurate?
Well, As I see it, I think there's an element of what you say is potentially in their kind of game plan or what have you. But as I see it, they are just sitting on huge sums of cash. They have $146 billion worth of cash, of which $111 billion is in foreign subsidiaries. Now they invest $44 billion in U.S. treasuries. They invest $54 billion in corporate bonds, and they are just earning an income. It's a hedge against inflation in a sense. It's also and it's earning them income while they kind of just sit on it and not repatriate it. So in a sense, it is a hedge against the tax they may have to pay once they come to an arrangement with the U.S. government.
I'm realizing I need a better accountant.
Yeah.
Or a few $100 billion more dollars, that might help as well. Now, is this? We talk a lot about the sort of the shell game that companies play to avoid taxes, moving their money around the world, going to countries where the taxation is more favorable, and so on. But the interest, would you characterize this as corporate welfare? Is that an accurate kind of, if not oversimplified, name for it?
Are you saying that what they do, this
Yeah,
amount of money that are receiving is welfare for corporates?
exactly.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily be so, well, I'll put it in those polite terms. I mean, I do, I mean, personally, I think it's a ludicrous situation. It's mind-boggling to think that, you know, there's a huge need for a significant amount of that cash to be repatriated in America. I know that infrastructure needs investment, schools, hospitals, what have you, and they are I suppose they're earning interest on it, and I think it's kind of like.
You're talking about there. So I'm a little confused here. You're talking about Apple's own money, which they've decided to invest in a way that, yes, they're going to have to pay. They're going to lower their sort of the tax oversight. But you keep talking about it as if it's not their money. And you seem bothered by the fact that they've invested in treasury bonds. So they actually have the U.S. in debt to us. Now, I just think that's very savvy. It's unfortunate because it kind of feels like maybe Americans are paying twice. They buy the hardware, then they through the government pay Apple again. But when push comes to shove, it is. I mean, say yes or no to this question: is this Apple's money?
It's profits earnings that they've made.
No,
but
yes,
listen, I think they like a lot of other companies in the world are playing a game of brinkmanship and are giving and then there's a big standoff. I mean, the price of there is a certain price you have to pay for civilization, and that is called tax. If you want decent schools, roads, hospitals, and if you want an educated workforce, if you want universities, you need to pay. Pay for that, and these companies are denying that. We all have to pay a little bit of money, otherwise there's chaos out there, and these companies are choosing not to do that. Now, obviously, they have made money.
What is Apple paying in taxes on it?
It's also European. Sorry, just to say, it's also money that they've made in Britain, in other European centres that they're parking in these jurisdictions. So it is their money, but at the same time, these companies do need to pay a price for civilization.
Now, at least one of these companies says the problem is, the reason they're doing this is that U.S. corporate taxes are too high. And I think on paper, at least, taxes are higher than other countries, but the amount actually paid by U.S. companies is much lower, probably because of loopholes and offshoring and stuff like this. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the U.S. Corporation tax rate is the highest in the industrialized world at 35%. And, you compare that to the UK, which is 21%. So, yeah, there is an issue there. And I think, ultimately that will be lower. But and as you correctly say, the Congress a couple of years ago found the effective tax rate paid by U.S. corporates is 12.1%. So, and as you say, it's down to tax breaks and various other measures. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Citizens for Tax Justice found that the US's most profitable companies paid 19%. So, there is reform needed in the US tax system and the international tax system. But at the same time, as this report shows, that the tech companies, and not just them, but other sectors are getting an income out of this situation.
Well, I want to thank you, Nick, for coming on and explaining this situation to us. And also, I would encourage others to go read your report at thebureauinvestigates.com.
That's very kind of you, and thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. And you can also find Nick on Twitter at Nick Mathiasen.
Great.
Well, in a sec, we're going to talk about some weird news and research coming out of social networks and related to social networks. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle is a company that will buy your old used phone or tablet or other gadget. It's a fantastic service that you should use to fund your next purchase. If you're thinking about getting an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy S5, maybe you have your eye on an iPad or a Moto X, you can fund that next purchase by selling your old or not that old device to Gazelle. Just go to Gazelle.com. That's Gazelle.com. And tell Gazelle the condition. They'll even buy broken phones and tablets. And you can get a risk-free offer for your gadget and even free shipping. They pay by check, PayPal, or if you want to use the Amazon gift card option, you get an extra 5%. That's 5% free money. So go to Gazelle.com and get an offer. And that offer, of course, is locked in for 30 days. So even if the value of your device declines over the next month or so, they'll still honor the price that you plugged in initially for that 30 days. And of course, this depreciation of devices is a very important fact. With each passing month, the stuff you get, the stuff you own, the stuff you have sitting around in a drawer or a box or in the garage or on a shelf is losing value. It's just like flushing money down the toilet. You don't want to do that. So go to Gazelle.com and lock in your offer. Now, of course, they paid more than $100 million to over 700,000 happy customers, including me. I've used them, and I've been very, very happy with their service. So find out what your Apple or Android device is worth. Take a minute, go to Gazelle.com and find out. Do it now because your device may lose value the longer you wait. Well, a new study found that people who click through to news sites from social networking sites tend to be less engaged, far less engaged, in fact. The report published by the Pew Research Center today, and it found that it's hard for content sites to maintain connections with people coming from Facebook and other social networks, using Facebook as the focus of the research, though. Neiman journalism staff writer Joseph Lichterman posted a really interesting analysis of the numbers this morning, and he joins us to talk about it. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So what was the big takeaway from this study?
So essentially the main thing, the biggest takeaway from the study was that people who are coming directly to sites, so either bookmark or typing in a URL, are staying 3 times as long on the site than someone who comes in from Facebook, or 5 times, and they visit the page 5 times as many times per month, they click through 5 times as many pages per month and visit 3 times as often per month. So that's significantly higher for people going directly to a site as opposed to clicking there through something they see on Facebook.
Now, do you have any theories about why this social traffic is so fickle?
It seems, it just seems to make sense. If you're going to, say, visit the New York Times, you're going to seek something out and you know the New York Times brand and want to read what's going on in the world there, as opposed to seeing a link to something on Facebook and reading an interesting article and then going on to whatever is next in your feed and sort of moving on. It's not something you necessarily sought out, but something you just really stumbled upon.
Now, Lance, of course, on Mashable, you guys really care about driving traffic, and you care about where that traffic comes from, and how, most of all, you care about how engaged your readership is. Does this research kind of freak you out? I mean, we see a trend away from bookmarking and subscriptions to RSS feeds and stuff toward social networking discovery for content. Do you envision a world in the next few years where nobody sticks around, where it's very difficult to have sticky audience?
We're pretty much living in that world now, especially with younger surfers who are incredibly ADD and get most of their news and information through a variety of social networks, platforms like Tumblr, and they dance from link to link. And these are not the traditional, there was the idea of content aggregators, and not really that. They're sort of feeds. They're feeds with people who are creating content, sometimes from the news and information they find, but they all point off in different directions. It used to be the idea that if you had a website, the goal and the golden number was like 4 pages per visit. If you got 4 pages per visit on any one site, that was a miracle. Usually you were between 2 and 3. Now, 1. They don't like to go through page galleries where they have to go page. They say 1 page and then they're on to the next thing. He said something very important, talking about a feed. That is absolutely right. People are focused on feeds which have a variety of links, and they go fast and they don't read much. The only way, by the way, you can get them to read a lot is if you tell them in advance that it's a long read. Everything is changing. So basically, we understand this. We understand that the value and importance of the homepage is somewhat diminished now, and that the value of social outreach, of your stories across all these platforms is critical.
Now, Joseph, one of the interesting things about this is that, of course, everybody sees the move towards social discovery of content and the effect of sort of link bait style headlines of the kind that BuzzFeed and Upworthy and other sites have been very successful with. But in gravitating toward that style of headline, toward that type of attracting readers. In fact, even television shows are doing this these days. Does this study suggest that this might be a losing strategy? Because, yeah, you get more traffic, but you get these unengaged readers on the one hand, and then you may be angering or upsetting the type of reader who would stick around and engage a lot more.
I think it really depends on the site and the brand that they're trying to do. So if you look at a place like BuzzFeed, according to the study, 50% of their referrals are from Facebook. And Ben Smith has talked about this a lot. Sort of their goal is to promote sharing, and they do that very well. And they see the amount of time people coming in from Facebook, they spend much more time on their site, BuzzFeed, than they do on most other sites. That they're really an outlier in the study. But if you look at a place like, say, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, which are reliant on subscriptions and people paying to get access to this content, you want to see higher engagement numbers. And those types of sites are seeing higher engagement numbers from their direct visitors.
But Joseph, what you're talking about is very interesting to me, because the two brands you mentioned, which are really old brands, New York Times and Wall Street Journal, and all the other brands you mentioned, BuzzFeed, Upworthy, and possibly Mashable as well. These are new brands, and they speak to very different people. The people who are reading Wall Street Journal and New York Times, they absolutely have them bookmarked. They're probably daily destinations, and they're also probably all over 35. The people who are driving the sort of the need for consuming news through social media, and the reason that BuzzFeed Ben says that social engagement is so critical. These are young people who will drive trends going forward, and whether they're 14, 18, or 25, what if they like the story, their immediate response is to share it, and if that isn't your goal, obviously. Then you're failing, whether you're BuzzFeed or the New York Times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sharing is very important. And it's interesting also, even the direct referrals are seeing various degrees of engagement. So it depends on your brand as well and the type of content you're producing. And so like CNN, people are going there for breaking news, quick hits, is seeing the level of engagement, even on direct, is much lower than the Times or FoxNews.com, where people are going for more analysis and in-depth type of coverage. So the level of engagement is really varying across the board.
Well, Joseph, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and explaining this research.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great.
All right, you can find Joseph at NeimanLab.org and also on Twitter at YLichterman. That's YLICHTERMAN. Well, emotions on social networks can spread like a virus, according to a new study that tracked 100 million Americans and 1 billion social messages. Robert Lee Holtz is a science writer for the Wall Street Journal, and he joins us to explain this research. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here.
First, can you tell us about the study, who conducted it, and how they went about it?
Okay, well, this was a study that was conducted jointly by political scientists at UC San Diego, some sociologists at Yale University, and of course Facebook itself, which contributed the data, made it available to the social scientists, but also two of its data scientists were involved. Basically, what the study shows is that in a statistically significant way, that the feelings that we express online, not just things like, I hate my mother or I want to shoot my boss. But I mean, subtle emotional valences, tonalities, actually have a kind of infectious, contagious effect across our networks of friends and acquaintances that we're linked to online. Now, this is interesting for two reasons. One, as you may know, since the birth of social media, sociologists and psychologists have been arguing about whether anything that happens to us in this virtual universe that we inhabit, that you and I inhabit in a way right now, does this really sort of affect us in the way that face-to-face encounters, emotions, and moods do in the real world, if I can be rude and call it real? After all, there's physicists now who suggest that the universe we inhabit is actually a hologram. It's a discussion for another interview, perhaps. But in any event, so this research goes to the heart of that debate, and it says that, yes, I'm in a bad mood. I post a gloomy status update on Facebook, and that irrespective of the actual content of the message, will affect your mood in a distant city on the other side of the country.
Now,
thing.
Lee, one of the
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, but one of the super interesting things about this study was they linked weather events to this spreading of moods. For example, they found that rain in a city would change the emotions of people in that city. I guess it would bum them out. And then they would post these Debbie Downer social networking posts, which would then bum out people in cities where it wasn't raining.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to be clear, the reason that rain figures into this is that they needed some sort of marker for the purposes of this is an experiment. They needed some objective emotional marker, and they picked rain because people often are bummed out by the rain. But, a lot of us like the sound of the tap dancing on the tin roof or the pitter pat on the window. It was not, so they weren't looking for comments that were themselves about emotionally charged events, the death of a close one, losing your job, being angry about how the World Series turned out, but rather just something sort of relatively neutral. And they did not look at comments that were posted about the weather itself, about the fact it was raining. They just simply used data that they got from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration about the weather on any given day during this study period. And then use that to filter the emotional postings. So it's not the rain itself, it's the fact that the rain made you gloomy, and you then wrote a gloomy post about something else. Now, so that's the first thing. But the second thing that's really quite interesting here is that social scientists and psychologists, since the beginning of the social media thing and the incredible adoption of smartphones, have been dying to get their hands on these huge amounts of personal data, smartphone data, social network, Facebook data, Google search data, because this really gives sociologists for the first time a way to really understand the broad patterns of human behavior. Yep. And of course, as you would certainly understand, for reasons, some of them legal, some of them proprietary, and some of them being considerate of your users' privacy, companies like Facebook and Google or whatever will never give out this data. And the degree to which they do allow researchers to look at it is usually under some sort of non-disclosure agreement, so they can't publish it in the open literature. What's amazing about this is that Facebook actually gave them access to such an enormous data set. You're talking 100 million people in the 100 most populous cities in the United States, 1 billion status updates over the course of about 1,000 days.
Well, it's fascinating research, and I'm not sure if I feel ecstatic about it or if it depresses me, but I'm sure that...
But it's sunny outside, so you should feel very happy about it, Mike.
All right, I'll spread the word on Facebook. I'll definitely do that. And also, I think we've broken a record here. That's the first time I've ever heard considerate of users' privacy and Facebook in the same sentence. So I appreciate that. We're making history here on Tech News Today. Lee, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today.
Always a pleasure.
All right, thanks again. You can find Lee's work at WSJ.com and on Twitter at Lee Holtz. That's LEHOTZ. A report coming out of India says that Microsoft may give away Windows Phone free to 2 Indian phone makers. The Times of India sources told them that the Lava and Carbone handset makers have convinced Microsoft to license Windows Phone without charge, which would definitely be a first for the company. What do you think, Lance? Is this a trend? Is this a new Satya Nadella Microsoft where they're going to be giving away Windows and Windows Phone?
I don't ever see that coming to the U.S. I think that's a pure expansion play. There's tremendous wiggle room in developing nations for growth. There's a lot of saturation here in developed markets like the U.S. So this is a very smart move. If this is true, it's a very smart move on Microsoft's part to get on the fastest on-ramp in those nations, in say, India, to grab some sort of market share really quick. I mean, it's actually kind of it has a flavor of a BlackBerry model, where the phones were all but given away, get 2 for 1. They were suddenly everybody was using BlackBerry, but they won't make the mistake of doing it in the U.S. because I think it'll actually undercut what's going on here, which is a nice steady growth. But they can do what they want out there, and not too many people who are writing about it a lot will pay super attention So smart move on Microsoft's part.
Yeah, I think that's astute analysis, because essentially the alternative is not to sell phones. From this report, they implied that this was essentially a condition by these carriers, and pretty much by all the carriers in India, that the cost had to be zero. Otherwise, it was a no-go, and they're just going to go with Android, fueling that competition for Microsoft. Now, just as a context, Microsoft reportedly charges its closest partner, Nokia, between $20 and $30 for Windows Phone for each Lumia phone.
Can you do this when you say Nokia as a partner? You have to partner.
That's right. That's right. I should pretty much do that all the time, like Chris Farley. That would be, I think, a great enhancement to the show. So I just want to quote one handset company executive from one of these companies that was quoted in the article. It said, "Free Windows Phone is part of strategic partnership for both Microsoft and us. It's an experiment." So just to be clear, it's an experiment, and Windows Phone still doesn't have a lot of appeal in the market, but now that it doesn't have any licensing fee, it becomes easier for us to experiment with it. So they're going to give it a try and see how it goes. I think there's a very good chance that Android is so far ahead and has such good mind share inside India that even at the cost of zero, this may not be a successful strategy for Microsoft. But again, they don't have a whole lot of options in that market. And so it's good to see them trying new things. We don't know whether this is Satya Nadella deal or whether this was a holdover from the Ballmer era. But in any event, it's a new Microsoft, and they seem to be getting a lot more flexible with things like pricing. Well, in just a sec, we're going to do some follow-up on Amazon's Prime price and tell you about a couple of wacky projects. But first, something really cool happened today on Google+. I'm a big Google+ fan. It's no secret. And they used to, when you put in a URL, a link to a site, and you wanted to sort of reblog something that was elsewhere on the internet, it would put this tiny little thumbnail. And so if you were somebody like me who blogs on Google+, you could have a big advantage over almost everybody else on the site, because you could post full-size pictures and make your posts a lot more appealing. Well, today, what Google+ did was they made full-size pictures the default for people who just simply post in URLs. They grab a picture from the other site. What does that mean if you're on Google+? That means that you have a lot more competition for attention, because now the site has suddenly and automatically become way more visual. Facebook has also recently made their site a lot more visual. So the visual nature of the web is getting super intense. And that's why you need Shutterstock.com, one of our sponsors today. Now, Shutterstock.com has over 30 million high-quality stock photos, as well as illustrations, vectors, and video clips. And they'll help you take your creative products to the next level, not just bloggers. If you have a company, if you're doing marketing, if you're doing a publication, an ad, some kind of video, any kind of creative project, you need killer videos. And Shutterstock.com has got them. They add more than 20,000 new images every single day. So if you visited Shutterstock.com last week, there are a lot more pictures to choose from. And so one of the killer features of Shutterstock.com is their search engine. How do you find the perfect image when they have so many to choose from? Well, their search engine is really amazing. You search by the size of the image. You can search by the color. You say, show me everything in lime green. Show me emotions like sadness or happiness of the kind that spreads throughout the social networks and affects everybody, as we discussed earlier. You can look by gender. You can combine these search results and end up with exactly the stunning image that you need to really have an eye-grabbing presentation, whether you're a blogger or an advertiser or no matter what you're doing. So I strongly recommend Shutterstock.com. If you go to my Google Plus page where I blog, you'll see some great images there that I purchased from Shutterstock.com. And I often get asked, where do I find these pictures? Well, I don't steal them from Google Images. I'll tell you that. I get them from Shutterstock.com. So try Shutterstock.com today and by signing up for a free account. You don't even need to enter your credit card. Just start an account and begin using Shutterstock to imagine what your next project could be like, and save some of your favorite images to the Lightbox for later review. If you do decide to purchase, here's what you do. Use the offer code TNT314. That'll get you 20% off, not just one package, but any package that Shutterstock.com offers. 20% off. Just use TNT314. And we thank Shutterstock for their support of Tech News Today. And this comes from a personal recommendation from me. I use them, and I love them. Well, we told you a few weeks ago that Amazon was thinking about raising the price of its Prime service, and today the company made it official. The price of Prime has gone up from $79 to $99 per year. Prime gives Amazon customers unlimited free 2-day shipping on many items, plus access to streaming movies and TV shows through Amazon Instant Video. The old price is in effect for one more week, so if you want to save $20, you better be quick about it. And in other news, MIT has built a better robot fish. Thank goodness for that. Their swimming robot has a soft silicon body and is controlled via Wi-Fi. The fish uses air pressure for muscle movement, which gives it the ability to swim like a real fish and even execute what MIT robot geniuses say are high-performance maneuvers. Specifically, they talk about a sort of a universal behavior among real fish, which is a kind of escape maneuver where they flip around, and this robot can escape in exactly the same way. The group is even working on an upgraded robot fish that uses water rather than air for the muscle movement, and that should give the fish a longer swimming time, up to about a half an hour. So we'll look for that robot. Everybody loves robot fish, and hopefully Google will use their robot companies to build a robot shark. You know, that would be in line with some of their other frightening and terrifying robots. And in other news, a new iPad game called Surgeon Simulator 2013 may be the most horrifying app ever. It takes a lot of control and practice to master the art of cutting open a patient and performing surgery using an iPad, so why bother? Why not just mutilate the patient in a kind of free-form Grand Theft Auto-style improvisation that, although sure to kill the patient, is at least vaguely entertaining. If you're watching the video, you know just how terrifying and awful this app is.
21st century operation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's disgusting, but seriously, when's it coming to Android?
Oh, my God.
Seriously.
I got a spleen. Look at me.
The video showed a vital organ that had been ripped out of the guts of this thing, and he was pounding him across the head with it. That is just terrible. Well, the game has been around for a while, but it offers new controls, new features, and new ways to commit medical malpractice, and it cost $5.99. Well, Lance, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today. You're always a great guest co-anchor. You ask the good questions, I tell you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. I had a great time as always. A lot of fun to be here. Fun to be with old friends.
All right.
So.
Well, thanks again, Lance. And we want to encourage everyone to subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT. Do it right now if you haven't already subscribed. You can also contact us by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. You can leave us a voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW or subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. You can also follow our social pages by searching for Tech News Today on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and YouTube. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific, tonight and every weeknight. You can also, finally, get breaking news every day by following Twit News on Twitter. My name is Mike Elgin, and I thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.